What if I told you one moment this season could rewrite Giannis Antetokounmpo's legacy forever? Right now, whispers in boardrooms and murmurs in Milwaukee garages aren't about wins or losses, they're about whether the Greek Freak stays or walks. And the truth might shock even the most die-hard NBA fan. It didn't start with a trade rumor. It didn't start with a headline. It started with silence. A strange, uncomfortable silence in Milwaukee, the kind that creeps in when a franchise realizes something feels off but nobody wants to say it out loud. Because when the Bucks hit the midway point of this season, the standings didn't just show losses, they showed doubt. And in today's NBA, doubt around a superstar like Giannis Antetokounmpo is louder than any breaking news alert. Think about how crazy that sounds. This is the same Giannis who delivered Milwaukee its first championship in 50 years. The same Giannis who stayed when everyone else said he'd leave. The same Giannis who signed the contract that was supposed to silence these conversations forever. And yet here we are, halfway through the season, with front offices across the league watching every Bucks game like it's a live audition. Because something feels different this time. The Bucks aren't just losing games, they're losing their identity. Night after night, you see stretches where the offense looks disconnected, the defense looks reactive, and the body language feels heavy. This team used to impose its will. Now it looks like it's constantly adjusting, constantly searching, constantly asking questions it shouldn't be asking this late into Giannis's prime. And Giannis feels it too. You can see it in the way he talks after losses. He's not angry, he's not defiant, he's reflective, almost careful. When Giannis speaks about winning, he doesn't talk about effort anymore. He talks about urgency, about alignment, about doing things the right way. Those are not the words of a player worried about tonight's game. Those are the words of a player thinking about the direction of everything. That's why league insiders aren't panicking, they're waiting. Because Giannis has never been the type to demand a trade. He said it openly. He believes in loyalty. He believes in work. He believes that championships mean more when they're built, not chased. But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody likes admitting. Superstars don't have to ask for trades anymore. The pressure builds quietly, conversations shift behind closed doors, and suddenly, decisions get made for the good of both sides. And that's where the Bucks are standing right now. At the halfway point, Milwaukee finds itself in a strange limbo. Not bad enough to tear everything down, not good enough to feel safe. They've tried adjustments, they've shuffled lineups, they've explored trade calls. Around the league, it's no secret if there's a deal to be discussed, the Bucks are making the call. They're not sitting back, they know what's at stake. Because when you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, time works differently. Every season that doesn't feel like a real championship run feels heavier than the last. Every early playoff exit echoes louder. Every stretch of inconsistency gets magnified. And when Giannis is giving you MVP-level production but the results don't match, the questions start stacking up fast. Is the roster good enough? Is the system maximizing him? Is the window quietly closing? And maybe the most dangerous question of all, how long before Giannis starts asking himself the same things? What makes this moment so fascinating is that nothing dramatic has actually happened yet. No trade request, no explosive interview, no leaked confrontation, just whispers. Executives holding off on moves, teams watching closely, scenarios being mapped out just in case. Because if Giannis ever becomes even remotely available, the entire league shifts instantly. And the Bucks know it. That's why they're aggressive. That's why every rumor feels louder around Milwaukee than anywhere else. Because the front office understands something crucial. Doing nothing is not an option. Standing still is the fastest way to lose a superstar who wants to win more than anything else. But here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. Giannis doesn't want out. Not like that. He loves Milwaukee. He's built his life there. His story is intertwined with that city in a way few modern stars can say. This isn't just business for him. It's personal. Which makes this situation even more complicated, because when loyalty clashes with reality, something has to give. And lately, reality hasn't been kind. Losses pile up. Defensive lapses show up at the worst times. Close games slip away. And when the crowd reacts, when frustration spills into boos or silence, it creates moments nobody expected to see with Giannis in a Bucks uniform. Moments that stick. Moments that get replayed in his mind long after the arena empties. You don't boo Giannis because you hate him. You boo because expectations are sky high, because standards were raised, because he showed you what greatness looks like, and now anything less feels unacceptable. That's the weight Giannis carries every night. And it's why this midway point matters more than the standings suggest. Because this isn't about seeding, it's about trajectory. League sources will tell you that conversations around Giannis aren't about if, they're about when clarity arrives. When the Bucks show they can truly contend again. or when everyone quietly accepts that the path forward may require uncomfortable decisions. Not because Giannis failed Milwaukee, but because the league never stops moving. The Bucks' recent performances didn't help calm anything down. In fact, they did the opposite. Losses came in bunches, the offense dipped, the defense slipped. And suddenly, Milwaukee found itself looking up at teams it used to tower over. That's when the chatter got louder. That's when rival teams started watching Bucks games not for entertainment, but for opportunity. Because desperation creates leverage, and leverage is the most dangerous thing in the NBA. Giannis, for his part, continues to say the right things. He talks about staying present, about focusing on the next game, about trusting the process. But listen closely, and you hear something else too, a subtle shift from blind belief to measured hope. A superstar who understands how rare his prime years are. A competitor who knows time doesn't pause for loyalty. And the Bucks? They're walking a tightrope. They can't overreact and gut the future. They can't underreact and risk stagnation. Every move has consequences now. Every week without progress tightens the pressure. Every rumor that refuses to die adds another layer to the noise. That's why the next stretch of games isn't just important, it's defining. Because teams around the league are watching how Milwaukee responds. Do they stabilize? Do they find rhythm? Do they look like a group building towards something real? Or do the same cracks keep showing up under brighter lights? At the halfway point, Giannis' future isn't a question because he's unhappy. It's a question because greatness demands clarity. And right now, clarity is the one thing Milwaukee doesn't have. This story isn't about betrayal. It's about timing. About whether a franchise can evolve fast enough to keep pace with its superstar's ambition. About whether loyalty can survive in a league that punishes hesitation. And here's the part nobody's ready for yet. The next few weeks may quietly decide everything, not with a headline, not with a trade, but with moments, small signs, subtle shifts, conversations that never make it public. Because in the NBA, futures don't always change overnight. Sometimes they drift, until suddenly, they're gone. And as the Bucks head deeper into the second half of the season, one truth is impossible to ignore. Giannis Antetokounmpo is still in Milwaukee. But the clock on certainty is ticking louder than ever. And what happens next might change the NBA landscape in ways nobody is fully prepared for. Because history has taught us one brutal lesson about the NBA. When questions like this start forming around a superstar, they don't just disappear, they evolve. Slowly at first, quietly, and then all at once. And Giannis Antetokounmpo knows that better than most, because he's watched this movie play out again and again with other legends who once swore loyalty meant everything. Giannis entered this league as a project, skinny, overlooked, drafted 15th overall in 2013, barely known outside hardcore scouts. Milwaukee wasn't supposed to be a destination, it was supposed to be a stop. And yet, year by year, Giannis turned that franchise into a contender with nothing but work ethic and belief. By 2019, he was the league's most valuable player. By 2020, he did it again. Back-to-back MVPs before turning 26, something only legends like LeBron, Kareem, and Jordan had done. Then came the doubts. Playoff failures, wall defenses, questions about whether his style could truly win at the highest level. And Giannis answered all of it the hard way. Not by leaving, not by teaming up elsewhere, but by staying, trusting, and delivering one of the greatest finals performances in NBA history in 2021. 50 points in a closeout game, a finals MVP, a championship that erased half a century of waiting in Milwaukee. That moment changed everything. Because once you climb that mountain, the expectations never come down. Winning once turns hope into obligation, and every season after 2021 has been measured against that title run. Anything less than a deep playoff push feels like regression. Anything short of contention feels like wasted time. And that's where the tension creeps in. Since the championship, the Bucks have remained competitive, but not dominant. They've won games, yes, but they've also faced early playoff exits that raised uncomfortable questions. Was the roster aging too fast? Was the margin for error shrinking? Could Milwaukee keep pace as the league got younger, faster, and more versatile? Giannis kept producing regardless. His numbers barely dipped. Multiple seasons averaging around 30 points, double-digit rebounds, elite efficiency at the rim. Defensive impact that still altered game plans. He wasn't the problem, he was the constant. Which makes this moment even heavier. Because when a superstar does everything right and the results still feel uncertain, pressure shifts upward, toward the organization, toward the long-term vision, toward the future. That's why Giannis' contract matters so much right now. He's under team control through the 2026-27 season, with a player option beyond that. On paper, that sounds secure. In reality, it creates a ticking timeline. The closer that option gets, the louder the speculation becomes. Not because Giannis is plotting an exit, but because the league operates on anticipation. Front offices don't wait for availability announcements. They prepare years in advance. And they're watching Milwaukee closely. Because the Bucks are at a crossroads that every small market contender eventually faces. Push all the chips in again and risk the future, or hesitate and risk losing the present. There's no safe lane here. Every move carries consequences. Every missed opportunity compounds. That's why the trade deadline chatter feels different this time. It's not reckless, it's cautious. Executives are waiting to see if Milwaukee stabilizes or slides, because if the Bucks stumble deeper into uncertainty, conversations change fast. Deals that seemed impossible suddenly feel logical. Scenarios that felt disrespectful suddenly feel realistic. And Giannis doesn't have to say a word for that to happen. The league knows his personality. He's not transactional. He's emotional. He values meaning. He wants to play games that matter. And as great as his loyalty is, it doesn't override competitiveness forever. Even the most patient superstars eventually need reassurance that the climb is still worth it. That's where the Bucks' recent struggles sting the most. Because inconsistency erodes trust. One night, the offense flows. The next, it stalls. One game, the defense locks in. The next, it breaks down in crucial moments. Over time, those patterns send signals not just to fans, but to players inside the locker room. And when the locker room starts feeling uncertain, stars feel it first. Giannis has always been careful with his words, but his actions tell stories too. Extra intensity. Visible frustration after losses. Moments where he looks around, searching for answers instead of imposing his will. Not because he's regressing, but because he's demanding more from everyone, including himself. And the scary part? This is still Giannis in his prime. He's not declining. He's not coasting. He's still one of the most physically dominant forces the sport has ever seen, which means the urgency isn't coming from fear, it's coming from opportunity. From knowing these years don't repeat, from understanding that championships aren't promised just because you work hard, that awareness changes how you see everything. It changes how you look at roster construction, at coaching adjustments, at organizational patience, and it changes how the league looks at you too. Because when a superstar like Giannis starts approaching that internal crossroads, the entire NBA ecosystem reacts. Suddenly, teams start asking hypothetical questions. Not public ones, quiet ones, asset-based ones. What would it take? What could we offer? What timeline makes sense? These conversations don't mean a trade is coming, but they mean readiness is growing. And readiness is dangerous. Milwaukee, to its credit, hasn't panicked. The front office has a history of aggression. They've swung big before. They understand that Giannis deserves a real chance every season. But aggression without alignment can backfire, and that's the tightrope they're walking now. Because one wrong move doesn't just hurt a season, it reshapes a decade. And Giannis knows that too. That's why he hasn't drawn lines in the sand. That's why he hasn't made demands. Because once you do that, there's no going back. The relationship shifts. The story changes. The narrative becomes transactional instead of personal. But silence doesn't mean satisfaction. It means evaluation. And evaluation is exactly what's happening right now. As the second half of the season unfolds, every stretch matters more than people realize. A strong run doesn't just improve standings, it restores belief. It quiets speculation. It reinforces the idea that Milwaukee is still a place where championships are possible. But continued struggles do the opposite. They validate doubts. They empower rumors. They turn patience into pressure. This is why Giannis's future is the league's biggest question at this point. Not because something has broken, but because everything is being tested. Loyalty versus ambition. Stability versus evolution. Hope versus reality. And the NBA has seen this story before. Stars don't leave when things are terrible. They leave when things are good, but not good enough. When they can still smile publicly while questioning privately. When they can say all the right things while weighing all the possibilities. Giannis hasn't reached that point yet, but the fact that we're talking about it at all tells you how fragile certainty can be in this league. Milwaukee still controls its destiny. Giannis still wears green. The season still has chapters left to write, but the margin for error is thinner than it's ever been. And every game from here on out carries more weight than the scoreboard shows. Because somewhere between wins and losses, between loyalty and legacy, Giannis Antetokounmpo is deciding what the next version of his career looks like. And whatever that decision eventually becomes, it won't just affect Milwaukee, it will shake the entire NBA. So when you zoom out and look at the full picture, this isn't just about a rough stretch or a shaky midway record. It's about timing colliding with expectation. Giannis rose from an unknown prospect to a two-time MVP, delivered Milwaukee a historic championship, and stayed loyal when leaving would have been easier. But years pass, rosters age, the league evolves, and patience starts carrying weight. The Bucks aren't broken, they're uncertain. And uncertainty is dangerous when your superstar is still in his prime. No trade demand has been made, no doors have been slammed shut, but silence itself has become the loudest signal. Every loss adds pressure, every win adds hope, and every decision from here forward matters more than ever. This moment isn't about betrayal or exit plans, it's about whether Milwaukee can realign fast enough to match Giannis's ambition, before questions quietly turn into answers. And that's where things stand.